Hi, I'm Prudence Granger, the carer in residence for the Carer Knowledge Exchange, and I was the carer for my dad who passed away from early onset Alzheimer's disease. This is Care to Share. On this podcast, I have open and honest conversations with carers. We talk about the roadblocks, challenges, and the joys of caring for a loved one. Today's episode may touch on some heavy themes. If you feel uneasy, take a break or skip ahead. This podcast is recorded on beautiful Gadigal land in Sydney. Today I'm in the studio with Najla Turk. Coming from a Middle Eastern Muslim background, Najla brings a unique perspective to the table. With decades of experience in vocational education and training, she's not just an expert in equity, diversity, and inclusion, she's a real powerhouse and has written a book called The Art of Diversity. As a carer for her husband dealing with younger onset dementia, she's reshaping the way we look at disability and the care experience. I'm thrilled to have you here with us today, Najla. How are you?
I'm very well. Thank you very much for the invitation.
So tell me a little bit about your life growing up and your family background.
So my parents arrived to Australia in the early 60s and I was born and raised in Australia. Middle Eastern background and Muslim background. Went to a public school system, did the cultural thing, married, started a family, and in my late 20s, early 30s, I aspired to enter the workforce. So I did a few courses, started off with Statement of Attainment, and those few courses ended up in a master's degree. So I did every level all the way to the master's. And, I just try and learn on a daily basis. And what I found was that I really didn't fit into any world. I wasn't Australian and I definitely wasn't Lebanese. I had my own identity, so I call myself the bicultural woman, individual who thinks outside the square.
So how did you meet your husband?
Again, bicultural is very cultural. We're very strict background in that we weren't allowed to have friends come over. We couldn't have sleepovers, friends coming over, sleepover, nor could we sleep over. And definitely a boyfriend was out of the question. So it wasn't an arranged marriage where, well, hello, Najla, this is your future husband. But it was, we're very big in the community, a lot of social events. We all mingle. This is an eligible bachelor. Get to know him. Do you like him? Let's pursue. If not, it is what it is. And we just keep intermingling until we find somebody that we find would suit our lifestyle, our value system, ideally from the same part of Lebanon, same academic level. Yeah, so I met my husband and I fell head over heels. Lovely man, very passive, very caring, very funny. And he just had this second nature to be more natural. Yeah, so it's been 40 plus years, 43 years, and I haven't looked back. It's just been, a blessing, to be honest.
What are some of the expectations of you from a cultural perspective within your immediate family?
Well, the first cultural expectation was that I'd never work, that I'd be a full-time mum, housewife. But being a rebel, I wasn't going to do that. So I entered the workforce. I think I was one of the very first Muslim women to work. So I've been working now for over 40 years, 43 years. And hubby supported me on my journey to be career-orientated. But the second would be the fact that I had 3 daughters, and culturally that was like unheard of. You can't stop at 3 girls. You must have that son, the heir to the throne. But there was no throne. But the perception was that the son would look after you in your old age. So that was very disappointing. That disappointed my parents. But my husband and I, as I said, he's very open-minded, very approachable. He also thought outside the square. He's like, no, we have children that suits us, and boys and girls are the same, and in that you have to invest your time and your effort, and whatever happens when we're older, it is what it is. Thankfully, I had 3 daughters who are 10 times better than any son in any Arabic family, so I've been blessed there. And the last expectation is this expectation that my husband was diagnosed with dementia, early onset, and my kids were devastated when I made the decision to continue to work. So I expected it from the community. I expected it from my parents. I did not expect it from my adult children. So we then had this terrible conflict where we had words, and I basically had to stand up for my rights as an individual. And I said, I am not going to self-sacrifice and give up my career to care for your father full time, because it's not in me. I can balance both roles, but I can't put his needs before mine because I'm just as important. And they found that really hard to wrap their head around, the fact that I was very Western and less cultural. And I was disappointed because they were more cultural than Western.
Do your daughters at all help within the caring space of your husband?
100%. Yeah. I've just come back from overseas and they were, amazing. They stepped up when I was overseas. But when I was here, prior to leaving, they have young children of their own. And the thing is with dementia, Alzheimer's anyway, in my husband's situation, he wants the attention on himself. It's all about me. And he's now competing with the other children, the grandkids, and he actually sees them as rivalry. So every time we do get together, he's not a happy man. So they do see him and they do support me when the kids are at school and when they can. But I can't expect too much from them because at the end of the day, I've been blessed because we've been receiving NDIS. So my husband's a recipient of NDIS and they've, been able to support us with support workers. So the cultural expectation, just as they have on me, I also had on them. And then I realized that we're in a Western country. I can't put too much pressure on them. It's a hard slog to care. And he's at that stage now where he doesn't recognize his daughters. He just sees them as other people.
Before your husband was diagnosed with Alzheimer's, your father had Alzheimer's and you became a carer for him. Was there many lifestyle shifts with that?
It wasn't before my husband had dementia. It was actually the same time my husband had dementia. So my husband was diagnosed, I'd say 6 years before my father was diagnosed. So I saw the signs and I was on top of everything. But there was a stigma with the word dementia for myself and the community. I couldn't say the word. I used to cringe every time anyone used the word dementia because Dementia Australia were using it all the time. And I said, don't use that word. And I said, but that's what it's got. But don't use that word. Let's call it the D word. So it took me a few years for me to wrap my head around the D word, and I was saying dementia. And so I was able to be realistic about the symptoms and I had acceptance. So when my dad got diagnosed, I accepted his symptoms, yet my family were in denial. So thankfully I had lived experience because I was able to support my father and advocate for him. Because the difference is, there's a 30 years difference between the two of them. So my dad was in his late 80s. My siblings disempowered my father by taking control. The boys wanted to step up. That's why we have boys in the Arabic community, for them to step up and take ownership. And they wanted to do that. Whereas my dad wasn't letting go. It's like, there's nothing wrong with me. It was my wallet. And my brothers wanted to take the power. But that's why my dad passed and he never gave his power of attorney. He would never sign over power of attorney because he's like, no, I don't have dementia. So he was in denial. So, I kept having to juggle these balls. But first and foremost, I had to wrap my head around the acceptance of the term and, there's understanding that there's stigma, cultural stigma, and there's that obligation for me to care for my husband. But then the family loved the fact that I was there for my dad. So it jeopardized my work, my career, finances, mental health, because it took its toll mentally, physically and emotionally because I was doing both.
So you spoke a little bit earlier about the stigma around dementia, or the D word.
Yeah.
How did that kind of play out for you, especially when your husband was first diagnosed?
Interestingly, my children picked up there was something wrong with their father and they took him to the GP and they had him scanned. And I kept saying, there's nothing wrong with him. We all forget. And then when I saw the report and I read it about 150,000 times, and I can see there was clearly the MRI, there was evidence. Then I came to terms with it, but I couldn't say the word, and my children were in denial. So we couldn't discuss dementia because they're in denial. And the fear factor for me was the life expectancy is very short. So I was living in fear, and then I had this word that I couldn't say, and I wanted to protect him from the community because I thought if his daughters aren't accepting, then I don't think anyone else is going to accept. And my father withdrew, didn't want my husband coming over because he felt very uncomfortable. And how I knew he felt uncomfortable because he wouldn't make eye contact with him. He just totally dismissed my husband. And then I found out that even the GP was dismissing my husband. So once everyone knew he had dementia, they were making eye contact with me. So everybody was excluding him. And so I was going through my own journey of where, who am I now that I've lost my job, and now that I always saw myself as being, entrepreneurial, and now my values were being questioned. So a lot was happening for me, my own personal journey. And then I resented my children, then I resented the community, then I resented my father. Because I'm thinking, this is a loving man. This is a man that he is deserving of dignity. So I drew out all my super and we travelled the world. Yeah, so I've left with no super. I just went in an emotional state. I went, well, I'm going to prove to everybody that he can live a quality life. And I went, I'm going to make choices to demonstrate, to role model to the community and to family and friends that your life can continue even if you're diagnosed. And I did that. So the D word. Now, how did I overcome the D word? I met this woman. Her name is Dr. Gaynor MacDonald, and her husband had passed from dementia, and he'd had it for 5 years, and he was a mature age man. And she was committing her entire life to raising awareness around dementia. So I received an email, sat in her webinar, and then she said to me, I'm here for you. Should you ever need anything, ask me. So I was constantly on the phone calling her, and I said, but the D. She said, no, just say the word. I said, I can't say it. So she was on my case every day for months and months until it normalized dementia. So the stigma is huge. Mm. And the word in Arabic dementia translate to crazy. Hence why I do want to use the word, because he's not crazy, far from it. So I needed to protect him. I also wanted to protect myself. So I played down his dementia. So I withdrew him from community. I withdrew him from the family. My brother-in-law said that I gave him dementia. He's one of 10. They all cut him off. Nobody wanted to see him. Nobody wanted to dialogue with him. So my salvation was Dementia Australia, because they case managed him, and then NDOS came on board and they were a godsend. And so that was my new world. Mm. That little circle was my world. And even my kids, I kept them at arm's length, because also there was, we had a bit of dialogue about how I wanted to progress with my husband on the journey. For example, I was looking at moving to maybe Tasmania and living in the dementia village for him.
I know about that village. It's meant to be really beautiful.
100%. And I wanted him to live life to the fullest. And then my kids shut me down. No, it's not happening, Mum. You go move to Tasmania. Dad's staying here. So there's a lot of conflict that was happening, and I was dealing with conflict within myself as well as with family, friends, and community. So did I do justice by taking him away from the community, by protecting him? I made sure all his support workers were non-Arab. I made sure he was not seen in our local area. I'd have him go to the shops outside, 20 minutes, 30 minutes drive, so nobody would recognise him. No, because he was well recognised in the community. So I made sure his walks were outside the area, the shopping was outside the area, the doctors was outside the area.
That would have added a lot of extra burden on your time and what you're already doing in your care. Did that take any kind of toll on you personally?
Oh, 100%, because not only was I protecting him, I was also educating and raising awareness to the support workers who are now working in the space of NDIS, who are unskilled. They're support workers with no skills. And so I'm constantly on top of them and saying, so when they would go out, I would go with them. I was a support worker, and I'd take them to the shops, and I'd sit in the park and I'd say, okay, do this and do that. No, don't do this, don't do that. And then I realised there's this massive gap between a good support worker and a poor support worker, but they're all poor. And even when I went to see my geriatrician, I realized even they don't understand. Like this neurologist said to me after 2 years of being diagnosed, why is he in a nursing home at the moment? He should be in a nursing home. My GP said, why is he not in the nursing home? You can't look after him. Well, now it's been 8 years, and I have been looking after him for 8 years, and my geriatrician says he's not had anybody at home at his stage. He's now at advanced stage. So everybody's like blown away by the fact that he's at home, but he needs to be at home because that's his comfort, and that's where he's the calmest. And so when he was going through aggression, and I locked myself in my room, and I didn't want to call the ambulance, I didn't want to call the police because I knew what they would do. They'd chemically medicate him. I just needed tools. And thankfully, I had Dr. Gaynor, and she was my go-to person. And that's how my perception started shifting. I took pride in talking about dementia. I was invited to, Carers ACT to talk about dementia. And, so I've been doing a lot of work behind the scenes, but advocating not for my husband, but for everybody else that's out there.
I really appreciate how you chose to approach it from the perspective of, there is a life beyond the diagnosis. My dad, as I've said before, he had Alzheimer's, younger onset Alzheimer's as well. And he was very, very keen on being an advocate for dementia and proving to people that it's not an end life thing and that you can still have a quality of life. And I mean, that's why I'm sitting here today. He was the one who kind of pushed me into advocacy myself. But with all of that, with your caring, your advocacy, your education, and you just kind of mentioned there that need for empowerment and resilience, what do those words make you feel?
I'm very proud of myself, to be honest with you, because I look at the situation, my situation, I look at other people's situation, and I just know in my heart of hearts, because my husband's nonverbal, and I know that he knows I'm doing my best. So for me, as if the geriatrician saying to me he should be in a nursing home, and he's not, and he's a happy Vegemite, plays music, loves watching programs on television, documentaries, playing ball, loves being outdoors. Yeah, I get a lot of joy. That is not just empowering for him, but for myself. So it works two ways. In the beginning, I was looking at it as it's all about him. And now I realize it's not about him. It's about me. Because if I'm good, then he's good. Yeah, it's like putting the oxygen mask in the plane. I need to self-care. So empowerment for me and resilience is taking a moment, checking with myself, giving myself permission not to be perfect. If the situation's not going the way I expect it to go, then it is what it is, just to roll with the punches and just day by day. And I feel that I'm growing every day just by venting and reading, researching so much. And, you hear, no two people are the same. Well, not good enough. We know no two people are the same. Like, that's why people are diverse. No two people diagnosed with dementia have the same experience. But there is an element of commonality, and that is that they can't live without the advocacy. That's like the key here, that they need someone to help them get through day by day, whether it's personal care, or whether it's outing, or it's whether dressing, or just a conversation. So that for me is everything.
Bit of a shift in gears to near the end of your father's life. There was a struggle to find the right support, and through his transition in palliative care, I believe. Can you talk me through that struggle a little bit?
Yeah, it's still very, very raw for me. I haven't gone there because he passed away last year, and it was the week before my daughter delivered her baby. So there's happy moments and sad moments, and so I've parked the sad moments. So I will go back and say that I've never experienced palliative care, and when he was discharged on palliative care, I thought it was a very fast decline, but it drew out for a very long time, over a year. And so I watched him deteriorate, and that was really, really hard to watch. And when we were discharged, because I'm a co-carer, so my sister was also caring, and thankfully she was the primary carer because I also had a primary care role, so I was secondary. We were told that we'd get support when he got home. No one No one approached us. No one contacted us. So we're doing it on our own. And then all the telephone calls that we made with the contact numbers they gave us, nobody answered. So you leave your details and there's no one return your call. So they just added angst. So we knew he was dying. All of us thought it was going to happen really quickly. And then there was no support. And we're all dealing with grief. There's anticipatory grief. We're dealing with grief differently. So, somebody was angry, somebody was withdrawing. One of my siblings stopped seeing my father altogether. All we had was my aged care. Now, my dad, thankfully, when I put him on my aged care, my siblings were disappointed because Dad doesn't need support. Dad's doing very well. He's an independent man. He doesn't need to be getting somebody to come in and take him for coffee. And I said, I am putting him on the system. He needs to be in the system because he's been a taxpayer for over 60 years and he's entitled to be looked after. So I want him in the system, and whether we use it or not is a different thing, but I want him in the system. So when he got in the system, he was level 2 and he was going out for coffees, and we partnered him with a lovely young lady, and it just gave him purpose and he was excited. Now, as he progressed, the following year, he was on level 3. That was no problem. He just transitioned to level 3 because his needs got higher. But when he was discharged in palliative, he was definitely level 4. The frustration of getting him from level 3 to 4 was excruciating because, but he's got someone to look after at home. We have others who have nobody. But, in a multicultural community, we are a collective society. There's an obligation that somebody will care for you. In the secular world, it's individualistic. The individual doesn't have family around them because they're independent. So multicultural families are being disadvantaged because we have family. To be told that there are other people who are priority over your father who's palliative, and because we're caring for him, because he has someone to check in on him, because he has someone to take him to the doctor, I was very frustrated with that. And so we followed up, and I put in a complaint, and we escalated, and it was a good 12 months. We got level 4 a week after he died.
Did you feel as if there was this sacrifice of yourself for other people? What was that like?
Very frustrating. I had my husband's on NDIS, so I was very lucky that because he's NDIS, his budget or his funding, his package was much better than anybody on my aged care. So I would use the funding to have somebody care for my husband while I went and cared for my dad. And my dad, towards the end, he needed 24/7 care. He had bed sores. He had thrush in his mouth. He was incontinent. He was on morphine. He was in a really bad state. Yet he wanted independence. He was so dignified that he wanted to go to the bathroom, So we knew he was frail and we couldn't physically take him, but he wanted to use the commode. So to meet his needs, that was really, really hard trying to get that balance. So yes, there's a lot of frustration on my part because I wanted it to happen, but I couldn't carry him on my own because he's a tall man who's like 80 kilos. He's heavy. And he always said, never put me in a nursing home, And so it never crossed our mind to put him in a nursing home, and we had to give him the care that he deserved. But my sister ended up with back problems. I ended up not as serious, but I had back issues as well. So it's affected our mental state, our physical state. To step in, he was entitled. He was entitled to care, and he didn't get it. At his most vulnerable, most pressing time, I felt he was abandoned. So I was very angry with the system.
How did you not burn out?
I hardly slept because my brain was ticking over. But I just kept saying to myself, you can do this. You must do this. Like 2 lives are dependent on you for quality care. It's no point me coming back 2, 3, 4 years later when they're gone to say, I'm in a good place now. I'm ready to do the work. You're fine. And women are resilient. Women, we might be soft on the outside, but we are so hardcore on the inside. Men are hard on the outside, but they're really soft on the inside. How can I say this? It's like you're drowning in an ocean and you look around and there's everybody standing watching you, but nobody thinks to throw you a lifeline. So, I was getting beds, ordering beds for him. I'm getting like anything and everything. I was checking with the OT. The OT had broken her leg. There was no other OT around. When's she coming back? Oh, we're not expecting her back for another 3 months. Well, we need bathroom renovation. So I said, let's go in there and do it privately. So we're going to do the bathroom privately because we need to get the wheelchair access in the bathroom. Then I signed off on this provider, said, no, not good enough. Let's get another provider. I did all my homework, checked in with everybody. Can we select a new provider? Of course you can. How long before the fundings go across? 2 weeks. I said, 2 weeks, fine. We'll wear it. It wasn't 2 weeks. The fine print, the money, the funding, his package gets quarantined. So we have to request to be unquarantined on average 90 days. So not only did we wait 90 days with no support. So we had level 3, but when I made the decision to go across to another provider, he got nothing. He should have been level 4, but he got nothing. So even the balance that he had on level 3, which is like a good $10,000, we couldn't even access it. So it was tough the entire time. It was frustration. It was anger. There was anger. There was resentment, and then he passed. And you're just standing there with your hands, empty hands. You think, was it worth it?
Do you ever worry about what this resilience you've had to show through all of this will mean on your future health?
Yeah, interesting you would ask that question because I wasn't aware that my health had been impacted. Family around me was saying, you need a break. And they're telling me, put your husband in a nursing home. Like, they're giving me permission. They're actually, like, it's unheard of in our community that we do that. It's like the Asian and the Indian community. You are raised to care for your elderly. But when your family and your friends and people around you, and support workers and your service providers are saying, you've maxed out, you have reached the rock bottom, like you've got nothing else to give, it does let you step back and question, but then think, can I live with myself? And here I am in Australia, a well-developed country, and we've got all these services, and I do have support workers, and I do have day programs, and who am I to be complaining? So I'm just going to suck it up. Like, yes, people around me might be seeing it, but I've got it so good compared to others in Yemen, in Africa. So yes, I do have moments where I find that I dip. And yes, my health has been impacted because I ended up with a couple of health issues and I ended up in hospital. My mental capacity, cognitive, capacity is not the best. I'm sleep deprived. I'm physically exhausted, emotionally drained. Yeah, so even the word respite in the package, we're entitled to respite. My dad also had respite, but the culture doesn't understand what respite is. It's unheard of that you put your loved ones somewhere to go have a break. So I did take respite and I loved it. I must admit, it was just the best thing, but I made sure it was only half an hour. It was a retreat. I was away for a 34-minute drive, so should my husband need me. But I had a team of people supporting me, and it took me about 3-4 years to, accept that I'm entitled to respite and that I should take it. And I did take it a few months back, and he was no different. Like, he was, my husband was a gem. He did all the right things. He didn't even miss me. And I was like, whoa, what an eye-opener. It's actually a good thing. Respite is amazing. So I encourage people, go do respite. Like, it's a breather. So that actually adds, to your resilience. When you give yourself permission and you do it, take action. There's nothing wrong with that. And guess what? This weekend I'm going on a P&O cruise. My very first ever.
Oh,
so I'm going for 3 nights. Yeah, I'll see you next week. So yeah, my sister said to me, I'm really worried for you. You need a break. Let's do a P&O cruise. And lovely. Because I'm an Elvis fan, they just got an Elvis theme. And yeah, so resilience is all about thinking outside the square and putting yourself first and foremost, giving yourself permission and taking action and doing it.
And so finding a way to be sustainable in care.
100%. And I just feel like my battery's been recharged and I'm coming back and there's no resentment towards him. And energetically, they know whether you're doing a good job. When I'm not happy, he knows I'm not happy. He's sad for it. He's sad for me being in his presence and I'm not, my bubbly self. And so it's actually a good thing, quality over quantity.
That's everything. Thank you so much. I really appreciate the advocacy journey you're on. And I think it is extremely valuable, not just within the dementia space, but also the cultural space, but then just in general advocacy for carers, for people with needs. It's a real privilege to hear your story. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you. You're welcome.
Thanks for listening to today's episode of Care to Share, a product of Impact Studios at UTS and the Carer Knowledge Exchange. I would like to dedicate this show to my father, Timothy Granger, who passed away during the recording of season 1. Caring for him was an experience that has changed my life forever. He was my biggest champion, my best friend, and now my greatest inspiration. The Carer Knowledge Exchange brings together carers and former carers, researchers, policymakers and practitioners to share knowledge in a bid to improve the lives of carers by connecting research to practice. It's a partnership with Carers New South Wales and the Institute for Public Policy and Governance at UTS in Sydney. If anything in today's episode piqued your interest and you'd like to learn more, visit us at carerknowledgeexchange.com.au. Support resources and relevant links will be provided in the show notes.